谈到这里的话呢，我想说，智能化呢是汽车的灵魂。我将分4个板块呢跟大家介绍小米汽车的智能化。好，第一点呢叫智能驾驶。上次的技术发布会呢，我介绍了小米智能驾驶的技术架构和算法。我今天呢简单的再跟大家汇报一下。第一点呢，自驾的投入巨大，但是在这一点上，小米非常的坚决。这个专属的团队呢已经突破了1000人，预计年底呢到1500人。我重申一下我们的目标呢，就是今年年内进入行业的第一阵营。那么我们小米的自驾呢做了2套，第一套呢叫 Pro 版，第二套呢叫 Max 版。Pro 版呢是纯视觉的 ，Max 版呢是视觉加激光雷达。大家知道啊，特斯拉做的是纯视觉，当然纯视觉的难度非常非常高，所以国内呢都用堆硬件的方法来拉起技术的差距。所以2套方案呢，我们同时做了。也许未来啊，大家都进化到全视觉的方案，所以2套方案我们都坚持做了。好，在讲到这里的时候呢，我想说的是，我们小米呢，坚持2套方案自研，坚持采用同源的技术方案，让不同版本的车都能享受到我们最新的成果和最好的体验。因为我觉得呀，没有任何一个公司能同时维护2套完全不同的系统，所以大家往往高配自己做，低配找个供应商来做。可是自驾的技术现在进步的速度非常之快，其实供应商非常难以跟上我们的更新速度和体验。今天，像我们全力在做智能驾驶的，是吧？主要是这6、7家。所以呢，在这一点上，如果你看重智能化，其实在这一点上是一个决胜点啊！我觉得小米的态度是非常坚决的，无论是 Pro 版还是 Max 版，都用的是11V 的高清摄像头，都用了 Orin 的平台，全部采用了全站自研的算法。好，在过去的3年的时间里面，我们的自驾的专业的测试团队实车测试呢累计超过了1000万公里。同时，依托小米强大的云服务能力呢，我们的仿真测试的规模达到了2.5亿公里，所以呢，这个里程数呢是足够的。因为对我们来说，大家对我们的要求是很苛刻的，我们希望我们一登场就有很好的使用体验。所以的话呢，我们全系标配了智能辅助驾驶，高速 NOA 呢上市即交付啊，而且这个高速 NOA 呢全国都能用。我们呢已经在全国的300多个城市和所有的高速路都已经测试过了，而且我们全系支持一键代客泊车，而且我们的智能辅助驾驶全系标配，这个支持了超过200种的车位。我们去每个城市测试的时候，都去了每一个能去的地下停车场去测试每一种车位，我们的完成率超过了95%。而且的话呢，我们全系支持了极窄车位泊车，两边只要有5厘米就能停得进去。这个采用的是端到端的感知决策大模型啊，它跟以前的算法已经完全不同了，它能停到极窄车位里面，这也是行业里面唯一一个在量产车里面采用这个感知决策大模型技术的。今天呢，全行业都在卷城市 NOA， 我也跟大家汇报一下我们小米的进展。这段时间呢，我们也邀请了媒体老师做了城市 NOA 的试驾，我们说一下我们的进展啊。4月份呢开启用户测试，5月份呢正式开通时程，8月份呢全国开通。这些老师的路测视频呢，可能会很快会放出啊，大家先看看我们小米自己的路测视频。 所以呢，希望我们的车大家在试驾的时候也再体验一下我们的那个城市 ONA 啊。下面呢，我跟大家再简单的介绍一下我们的智能座舱。我们的智能座舱呢，全车5块屏，前排的中控屏、仪表屏 HUD， 后排还有2个小米平板，这是顶级的高清屏，这样的5屏联动的座舱系统。我们来逐个看一下。这个中控屏呢是16.1英寸的 3K 的高清屏，搭载的是骁龙8295的芯片，这是车机里面目前最强大的芯片，整个系统呢非常的流畅。我上次已经介绍过，说大家说哎呦就放了1块屏，这块屏我们刻意选择的是一个超大号的平板。我们为什么做成平板这个样子呢？是因为为了软件的兼容性。大家把屏幕做的大大小小各种各样以后，它给后期的软件生态带来了巨大的复杂度，这是我们做了10年平板所获得的非常重要的经验，所以我们把它做成标准平板尺寸的，这样小米平板支持的7000种软件立刻全部都能用。所以呢，这个系统是做的非常精致的。好，我跟大家简单的演示一下啊，比如说打开尾翼。你看，所见即所得，尾翼就打开了。打开后备箱，哎，一按它就自动开了。打开那个空调控制，整个系统和运镜是极为流畅的。而且我们的座舱系统应用了柔性框架技术，它的系统布局可以自由调整，甚至放大。所以呢，这个都特别好用啊。这个好。手车互联呢是我们小米的强项，我也给大家简单介绍一下。你一上车，你几乎不要做任何事情，手机和车机就无缝连接在一起，不需要任何操作。中控屏上就出现了你的手机的图标，接着你一键打开，你的手机就上屏了，而且呢还能全屏显示。如果你在看手机的电影，一拉你就可以在大屏上看。这样的话呢，用车机的屏幕和音响享受沉浸的观影体验。你还可以将车机上最常用的 APP 一键拼到车机上，常驻桌面，就像原生的车机系统一样。所以我们这个系统做的最好的是，它充分考虑了软件生态的兼容性。还有特别多的功能，我就不展开讲了。在这里的话呢，我再跟大家介绍一下车家互联，就是你的车和家怎么互动。在家里，你用语音跟小爱音箱讲话就可以备车，夏天出门前就可以提前打开空调智能。当然，这个功能我们特别增加了声纹识别，避免你们家的熊孩子捣乱啊。在车里，你还可以通过米家来控制家里的智能设备，还可以调用家里的摄像头，实时查看家里的情况。家里的门铃响了，车里能收到通知，你点击就可以对讲，看看是不是有人来送外卖。当你的车接近小区的时候，自动激活了回家模式。这就是无处不在的人车家全生态的智能生活啊！这个场景特别多，我就不展开讲了。好，我们再说后排屏。后排屏就是一个小米平板，但是这个平板是我们专门为汽车重新设计的小米平板 6S Pro， 它是 3K 的高清屏，搭载了第2代骁龙8的芯片，出厂就标配了小米澎湃 OS。我们还专门设计了3个pin点，所以它能解决供电问题。而且我们还设计了一个平板的支撑套件，你往上一挂就行。好，我要想跟大家说的是，人车家全生态。当这个平板一挂到车上，它就变成了车机的一部分。然后坐在后排的用户呢，就可以很轻松的调节前排座椅。就把前排座椅往前推，在后排呢可以设置导航的目的地和途经点，实时观看路况的信息。还有听音乐的时候， 前后大屏都可以同步查看歌词，就特别方便在车里 K 歌。我们还专门准备了 K 歌的麦克风。如果你的车后排坐的是孩子，前排的中控屏还可以给后排的孩子选择他喜欢看的动画片，所以这些场景的联动呢，我们都设计得非常的完整。好，第4项呢，小爱同学啊，小爱同学是国内最早的智能语音系统啊，已经现在开发了7年多时间，目前的月活跃已经超过了1亿人，每天被唤醒超过了2亿次。所以呢，它有着极为强大的基础能力啊，它有着极为强大的基础能力。那我们看看小爱同学怎么深度控车的。小爱同学上车以后带来了什么样的变化呢？我们来一起看一下。首先，我们看他怎么控制车窗。
小爱同学，
我在。
车窗打开一半。
好嘞。
好用吧？好，我们再看看他怎么控制后视镜。
后视镜往外一点。
好，往外调了10%。
再往外一点。
好嘞。
还有，调 HUD。HUD
向左调一点。
搞定。
所以呢，这个是特别好用的。还有一个功能啊，比如说过收费站，我们去找手机、找支付码，手忙脚乱的，你可以提前打开。
打开手机付款码。
哎，到了收费站一拿出来就可以，这个真的特别实用。小爱同学呢，还是个非常好用的用车指南。如果你不会用弹射模式，你可以直接问他。
弹射模式怎么打开？
它在这儿。
哎，他就直接告诉你怎么打开弹射模式。而且在座舱里面呢，我们采用了5音区的语音交互啊，就是你坐在第2排的中间的位置，小爱同学也能精准的应答。那么去年开始呢，那个小米开始拥抱大模型啊，这个我们也自研了整个端车的大模型。这个 1.3B 的版本呢，首次正式的上车了。那么大模型上车以后有什么场景呢？可能大家经常演示的是纹身图。好，我们来看一下。
画一个贴着青花瓷的小米汽车。
好的，正在创作中，稍等哦。完成了。
所以呢，你买的小米速7的车立刻就可以进行纹身图。可是，我们开车真的要这个功能干嘛？在手机上做不就够了吗？
It was a good call. The article to be called the whole speech, just doing lots of different shots. So just let you know, lots of shots, basically when he says, right, shooting through. Yeah, they're short version. Yeah, I'll do this, and then I'll give you one cast.
Are you trying to get a shot?
Yes, but I'll come from there to you, and happily the BBC and double job. I'm doing just the same.
No, actually go in the
Absolutely freeze the
come back out and shake the hand.
cold bottom that is not good. I need to be warm. It's very good actually. She came up with a great idea rather than a whole speech with different shots. So you can mix it up between recording and the still and stuff inside.
I think that'll be afterwards, isn't it?
this new car park. Flexible about where you move to and things.
You finished giving instructions. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And first of all, I'm very pleased here today to be alongside Commissioner Yanis Lenarčič, to publish the finding of Ireland's 2023 National Risk Assessment, supported through assistance from the futureproof.ie research project and Professor Caroline McMullen from DCU, who has made a presentation to us in respect of this project. And we warmly welcome Commissioner Lenarčič to Dublin, for making the effort to come to Dublin to this event, because of course it's funded by futureproof.ie, by the European Union. And we had a very good meeting and very good discussion. Professor McMullen, I think, made an excellent comprehensive presentation in terms of the work. Caroline's a Professor of Business and Society at Dublin City University and is Programme Director for the Masters of Science in Emergency Management, and is also key and is a key and indispensable partner in our national risk assessment process, and has kindly agreed to take any technical questions that you may have regarding the risk assessment. And before I speak about the national risk assessment, I want to thank Commissioner Lenarčič for funding the futureproof.ie research. And this is about evidence-based research and informing policy and our risk assessment process. And because the funding and the work has allowed us to evolve our national risk assessment process by integrating it with an examination of emerging risks. And this funding will allow Ireland to make, which will further help, Commissioner, this new methodology to be available across all European Union member states. The purpose of our national risk assessment is to provide a basis on which key risks are identified, prioritised and managed. The objective is to establish a coordinated approach to national risk management at a central government level. This new assessment focuses on key risks with the potential to trigger a national level emergency. The timing of this work is fortuitous, as each of you would expect. The evolving and ever more difficult geopolitical situation results in new risks appearing on our national risk register. These include such risks as damage to undersea infrastructure and disruptions to oil and critical supply chains, not to mention cyber security risks also. As I've said, a key enabler for this new national risk assessment has been the funding secured from the futureproof.ie project. The new methodology introduced through this project integrates the assessment of traditional strategic risk, which is based on historical data, with the foresight and forecasting required to monitor emerging risk. The report also contains an implementation plan, which will involve the Government Task Force on Emergency Planning taking a structured approach, requiring it to proactively scan for and report on emerging strategic risks on an ongoing basis. And this, in turn, empowers all state actors and service providers to be better prepared for future crises. This is important work, and I want to thank everybody involved and the wider teams behind all of this who have been involved in this work. Before closing, I cannot allow this moment to pass without taking the opportunity to acknowledge the critical role played by Commissioner Lenarčič and his team in delivering European Union humanitarian assistance to Gaza, to Ukraine, and indeed across the world to many of our conflict zones. In the context of Gaza, your invaluable work is being carried out against the backdrop of shocking warnings of imminent famine. And I welcome that the European Union has significantly stepped up its humanitarian assistance in financial terms. And I want to commend and thank you, Commissioner, for the very active role you have played and continue to play in seeking to ensure that this vital assistance can reach those in need, including through your recent travel to the region. And I'm also a witness to your work and your presentations to the Foreign Affairs Council in respect of the humanitarian situation in Gaza, and your objective, forthright and frankness in terms of describing the situation there. In particular, in my view, Israel must enable humanitarian access. Under international humanitarian law, Israel has an obligation and must protect civilians in Gaza and ensure that the essential needs of the population there are met. And it's also clear that an immediate humanitarian ceasefire and the unconditional release of all hostages is required as a matter of urgency. And for my part and for our part as a country, we will continue to make that case in every forum and at every opportunity we get. So welcome again, Commissioner. Thank you for your leadership and your help. And I'm very pleased to ask you to share your thoughts with our friends from the media.
Thank you, Toneste, Professor McMullen. Dear colleagues, we are living at a time of growing global crisis. Extreme weather events are now an everyday reality for Europeans as climate breakdown continues. And the threat of man-made disasters is a constant presence as conflicts multiply around the world. Just look at Ukraine, Gaza, Sudan, and beyond. And this poses new challenges for civil protection in Ireland, in Europe, and beyond. And we all have the responsibility to strengthen our disaster preparedness and response capacities. And I wish to thank the Irish government for the efforts to strengthen Ireland's disaster risk management and resilience. Also, through the report that was launched today, the Future-Proof IE project, along with the updated national risk assessment. This is concrete proof of Ireland's commitment to keeping its citizens safe. This innovative way of identifying emerging risks brings Ireland closer to the first of our European disaster resilience goals that we developed a year ago. This first goal is called Anticipate. If we want to get prepared, if we want to put in place sufficient response capacity, we first need to know what may be coming to you in the future. That's why we call it Anticipate. You have to identify risks also on the basis of what you have already experienced, but also on what may come that you have never experienced so far. And this is additional added value of this report because it dwells a lot on emerging risks, risks that Ireland has not yet experienced, but may experience in the future. At EU level, as I said, we have identified 5 disaster resilience goals. Anticipate is just the first one. The second is prepare, and then alert, and then respond, and then secure. But of course, the first one is the most important one because without the first one, others cannot follow. And we see this approach by Ireland as a model and an example of how to go about disaster resilience goals, how to reach them, and we will encourage Ireland to share this with other EU member states. And also we will encourage Ireland to proceed towards implementing this report, acting upon its findings so that people can be kept safe in this fast-changing risk landscape. And thank you, Toneste, for your kind words regard to Gaza. This is one of the examples of fast-changing risk landscape. It's a man-made disaster. It's not a natural-made disaster. We're trying our best, and we have not yet succeeded. We will succeed when there will be enough humanitarian aid coming into Gaza, and that has not been the case. And it's still not the case, in spite of the fact that we have had a number of Security Council resolutions calling for unfettered humanitarian aid to Gaza. And we at the European Union are trying to do everything we can. We are even supporting airdrops, which are inefficient and sometimes dangerous, and which do not guarantee proper distribution of humanitarian aid on the ground once you throw the stuff out of the airplane. We are also working on a maritime corridor from Cyprus, even though that will only be able to provide significant quantities of humanitarian aid when there is a port being constructed on the Gaza shore, which makes me emphasize the critical point here. The critical point for sufficient humanitarian aid to come into Gaza and be distributed throughout Gaza to all people who need is through land routes. And this is quite obvious from what the executive director of World Food Programme shared with us a week ago. Cindy McCain told us that there is sufficient food in Egypt and Jordan to feed the entire population of Gaza, all 2.3 million people, for months, at least until August. And this food is not able to get in sufficient quantities into Gaza. It would take 1 to 2 hour drive from those countries to Gaza to deliver this food. So we will continue to work for that. I would like to praise the consistent support of Ireland for the humanitarian action in Gaza, including the support and increased support to the UNRWA, which remains a backbone of humanitarian action in Gaza, and that I would like to thank Ireland for this support and for this approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Caroline, do you want to say some brief
Thank
words
you,
on your work?
Tánaiste. Just to say really that the National Risk Assessment 2023 and Future-Proof IE demonstrate the important link between academia and policy. The partnership between DCU, the Office of Emergency Planning and the EU allow us to engage in research-informed, evidence-based and data-driven policy development. The documents that are in front of you today will allow us and will set the scene for the next 3 years' work in terms of the Government Task Force for Emergency Planning and indeed all of our lead government departments. The top risks facing the country at this time, based on likelihood and impact and the experts' assessment of both of these factors, the first risk is antimicrobial resistant infections. Then we have a cluster of 3 risks: cyber attacks, disruption to critical supply chain and pandemics, followed by disruption to water supply or contamination. So those are the key priorities that will drive our risk mitigation work over the next 3 years on behalf of the Tánaiste and the Government Task Force and indeed the people of Ireland. Thank you, Tánaiste.
Thank you very much.
Okay, good questions. And like you said, could we start off with questions specifically on today's launch?
Tánaiste, can I just ask you, first of all, in your own opinion, what are the biggest risks? I know you mentioned there the threat to undersea cables, gas, electricity. For years we've been talking about underinvestment in military and defence. How big an issue is that when it comes to that risk? And then just secondly, if I could just get your reaction to that car crash in Mayo the other day, in Kira and Saoirse both losing their lives as well.
First of all, the risks as I see them, I think cybersecurity is a key risk. Since the war in Ukraine and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, cyber attacks have increased exponentially, and this has been documented by quite a number of sources. We experienced our own cyber attack on our health service, which basically paralysed our health service for a number of weeks and entailed extraordinary human cost and financial cost. And then a number of other public entities, Technological University in Cork, for example, had a cyber attack. So that's a very significant concern. Climate in terms of adaptation, and I would have a view that we need to adapt more quickly to climate because climate is happening right now. And we have witnessed that in terms of the flooding. Our water levels are very high. Will that affect our food production system this year in terms of tillage and tillage farming? So I see climate is very high. On the subsea cables, again, the issue there is more collaboration across like-minded countries and across the European Union, which we do. And it's also investment in intelligence. Everyone has an idea that it's all about ships. Yes, we need ships on the oceans, and we have an issue with recruitment and retention, but the more fundamental issue actually is around collaborating with others and identifying any third actors or people who shouldn't be in a given zone, or what are they doing in a given zone, and just huge collaboration. We've invested in 2 C-295 aircraft that have far greater superior capacity than anything we've had before, and they can cover our entire exclusive economic zone within a day or two, given the capacities. It's far better. So, and I've spoken to other military outside of the country who say that whole area of subsea cable is about collaborating with the private sector, with other countries. It's about maths. It's about really having a good capacity to identify anomalies within your cable structure emerging and being able to counter those risks. So it's far more complex than is portrayed at times. But it is a risk, and it's a risk that has been identified by the European Union and by other like-minded partners across the world.
we're no more vulnerable than anybody else. That's the point I would make. And the key to it is collaborate with others to be alert, to be attentive, and to communicate. So we communicate with other countries all of the time if we see particular ships or particular activity, and other countries will communicate with us. That's the key. And I think we're all horrified and very traumatised by what happened in terms of Unikira and the entire community in Mayo. I think our hearts and our thoughts go to the family and to the wider community, their family and friends. It is a shocking loss of life. Such beautiful young people who were really participants in their local sporting clubs, as we heard this morning on radio, in quite a number of sports. And it is shocking, and I think it points to the need for vigilance at all times on our roads. Obviously, we don't know the cause of the accident as such, but this is a shocking loss of life, and our thoughts and our hearts go out to the family.
Just a question for Professor McMullen. I guess, in your view, what are the key issues that Thomas raised, what are the key issues to be aware of, and what's changed to make some of those more pressing issues than they previously?
Thank you for the question. I think that what I would always like us to encourage us to do is to make sure that we follow the data and we follow the research. So we do need to make sure that the risks that have been correctly identified as the top risks are focused upon. The new risks this time, there is no doubt that the war in Ukraine was to the forefront in the minds of both the expert focus groups that assessed the risks and the public. So we did see a greater awareness of the fragility of our supply chains, whether that's food, medicines, energy, oil. So people were more aware of that. Also, they were more aware of perhaps the changing nature of warfare, so the use of drones or the use of cyber attacks would certainly have been prominent in everybody's mind. And that's the good thing about revisiting our national risk assessment every 3 years. It gives us a chance to update. Not that we would wait if we knew there was something critical, but it does make us all get together, all of the lead government departments, bring in the expertise together to make sure that we take a data-driven approach, and we have research to back up how we prioritise our mitigation measures and our planning and preparedness activities.
And Caroline, I think you said for the first time ever antimicrobial resistance emerged as the number one.
That's right. Last time when we undertook the National Risk Assessment in 2020, antimicrobial resistant infections had been the subject of study because if they were emerging risk rather than a fully mature risk. But this time the expert focus groups have rated antimicrobial resistant infections as the top risk facing us at the moment. So that's quite a shift, say, from the last NRA in 2020.
National security strategy, which hasn't been developed yet, hasn't been produced over the last 5 years. Would that not provide more of a concrete plan to try and tackle these types of risks?
Yeah, we're developing that. I announced that in the Parliament, the Dáil, some months ago in the context of the consultative forum, that we are developing a new national security strategy. A lot of work has been done on that, and that is important. And in terms of a maritime security strategy also.
And just on the antimicrobial resistance point, is there a lot of focus politically on defence in terms of military defence and maybe the risks zombie effect pandemic had in terms of crippling the country?
Yeah.
Risks that are maybe a lot smaller and a lot more of a threat to everything.
So when you look at the National Risk Assessment for 2023, what you'll see as the key output from that is a National Risk Matrix. And that sets out with clarity, based on the likelihood of something happening and the impact that it would have on people, the environment, the economy, the operating of society and the provision of services. So we've taken great care to make sure that we have studied each risk very carefully. So I think that we can take the outputs from that as a fair indicator of relative risk. And I agree that it's important not to chase maybe things that get more if I'm honest, coverage and stick to the research-informed processes that we have in place. And as the Commissioner was kind enough to say, we do lead the way in terms of risk management in Europe. We have a really sound, mature national risk assessment process. We have incredible engagement from the lead government departments to assist the Office of Emergency Planning and independent people such as myself to make sure that we get the very best people and the best data available to us. So we do need to use those priorities and not be sidetracked maybe by if I'm honest, media coverage. So we should be tackling the top risks in order, and there will be...
sorry, Karen, I just love your courage in front of the media to do that.
Oh, but it is important.
I never do that.
Well, luckily I have the data and the research to back up these claims. So I think you should be holding us to account and asking us to follow the priorities that the research has shown is where efforts should go. I think as Chair...
It's the right Keane philosophy, isn't it?
Well, it works.
Prepare to say it.
Taoiseach, just speaking of training to prepare, I know nobody could have been ready.
I walked into that now, go on, yeah, sorry, yeah.
I know nobody could have been ready for the pandemic in 2020 and it did catch every country on the hop. But if there was a situation like that again, how prepared is Ireland? We obviously haven't had our COVID review or inquiry or whatever kind of term year might be going on, and when it does come to play. So what kind of preparation for how ready are we for another pandemic? And then just separately, the social and affordable housing figures were released by Minister O'Brien this morning, and he has missed your social and affordable housing targets again.
Okay. Well, social are very strong.
You missed the target though.
But social is 11,000 delivered. That's but compared to anything ever achieved in the last 10 years, it's a way ahead.
But you're setting a target and you're not hitting it.
Yeah, but I mean,
we have to ask why you're not.
Certainly, but I would point out the fact that it is an incredible turnaround from where we were 3 years ago. We were nowhere near 11,000 social houses delivered, and yes, the targets are there. The targets are meant to stretch us, and we want to go and achieve them. But I will answer that robustly in the sense that we exceeded the overall targets of house building last year when we went to close to 33,000. 29 was the target. I think this year again, I think we're in a position to exceed targets again this year. But I would say this though, that we need to go above again, and we have to get certainly to 40,000 plus within the next 2 years, and that maintain that then at that per annum, if not even more. And I think with modern methods of construction, with greater pipelines coming along, that we can do that. And I think the recent conclusion of the National Development Plan funding and the resolution of the capital, I think, will maintain the momentum. I think the key thing for us in housing is to keep the momentum going. Affordable housing as a concept is relatively new in Ireland, where essentially it involves the state subsidising a whole range of private housing that has been built to enable people to be in a position to afford it. And yes, conceptually, it's been slower to develop, but there's a lot in the pipeline with the Land Development Agency, with the local authorities. The cost rental model was relatively new to Ireland. All these models are now in play. Yes, we need to accelerate the completion of those. On the COVID question that you asked, or the pandemic, the review is we're nearly at a position where we can establish that review. It is important that we do it. I've always said that it's an evaluation of how we did in the last COVID to inform the next pandemic, and how we should respond. And I think there are lessons to be learned without question, and we can improve upon our experiences and take from our experiences during the pandemic itself. And I think we, because of our experiences in the last pandemic, we're relatively, I would argue, well positioned to deal with a pandemic. But I think I do accept your point that a review would inform us even better. And hopefully we can get that off the ground now fairly quickly. I would hope so. Yeah.
I'll just ask you about the meeting you had with the Minister, the leader yesterday.
Yes.
Have you come any closer to deciding what sort of time period the next election will be held? Do you expect it to be held February, March? Have you come any closer?
We thought we'd ended all speculation about that last evening, because we know you have far more important things to be focusing in on than electoral speculation. No, I think we agreed, the three-party leaders agreed that we'd go the full term, which I think is important in terms of certainty around government, in terms of the legislation agenda that we have, and we identified the pieces of legislation. We need to complete the planning legislation, the future fund legislation that Michael McGrath is piloting through, which has been approved by Cabinet, because that really is a very important piece of legislation in the sense that we are saying we're putting money aside to look to deal with pensions in the future, to deal with healthcare costs in the future and the cost of ageing in the future, and also then to deal with capital expenditure from climate and from infrastructure. So that legislation is very important. The auto-enrolment policy that was approved at Cabinet, that legislation is very important also, because that's probably for 800,000 people who have no access to a pension other than the state pension in the future. This auto-enrolment policy, I think, is another key long-term initiative that we need to get over the line, and we're close to getting it over the line. And that's why I've always said I believe in a government going full term, because it enables us to do more long-term initiatives of this kind, and that we're not always just engaged in short-termism. So that's why I'm very happy with the outcome of last evening's meeting. The three-party leaders very clear that we go the full distance. Now you can get, whatever time, there's a certain constitutional time limit on the government, and you can correctly speculate that within a reasonable distance of that constitutional timeline, the election will take place then. But that's, I think, a positive that emerged from the meeting last night, and it was a good meeting.
Just in terms of maritime security again, has our support for Ukraine since the invasion increased the risk there, and in terms of cyber as well? And secondly, the two Navy ships purchased from New Zealand for patrol, are you going to have enough crew to put them out this year as well?
That's the plan, yes. And then at the most recent meeting with the military leadership, the idea is to have that out within a matter of the next 2 months or so. Yeah, certainly within that time frame. And also, in terms of risk, certainly risks have increased across Europe because the European Union has been very in strong solidarity in support of Ukraine, and in terms of the sanctions regime, in terms of support, the European Peace Facility support, which we're a contributor to, ours goes to non-lethal. And yes, there is higher levels of activity, particularly on the cybersecurity front, as I've said. And we've seen situations in terms of Nord Stream or other incidents that have happened in relation to cables. So we are under increased risk as a result of that. And there's also hybrid attacks, disinformation, and I have concerns in terms of elections. We've seen in other jurisdictions clear evidence of interference, particularly through social media platforms, and they could be more immediate risks. And thankfully, we have established an electoral commission in Ireland, something I was looking for a long, long time in my political life, and I was delighted we're able to get that over the line as well. And that now we have to build up the capacity of the electoral commission to be in a position to identify any risks to our electoral processes.
Is there any sign of nefarious activity in that area ahead of the June elections or the general elections?
Not in the context of the local elections yet that I have seen, but we'll be alerted to it.
Just really briefly on aid to Gaza, is there any development on how Ireland might contribute? I know pre-positioned aid in Saudi Arabia, I think, how we might get that to Gaza with the airdrops.
Well, we have pre-positioned aid in Dubai and in DC in Italy, but Dubai is more relevant to Gaza. We've already, you might have seen yesterday, we announced aid through road routes, essentially, aid that we have there, and that's on the way. The fundamental issue, and I'm sure the Commissioner would agree with this, is, and we are working with Jordan as well, and in terms of via the Jordanian route, in terms of Jordan doing the airdrops. But fundamentally, it's about trucks getting in over the borders and the land crossings. And nothing can get away from the fact that what would really have immediate impact is really proper flow of aid through the land routes. I think, as the Commissioner has said, there's enough food in the region to feed the entire population of Gaza until August. It is criminal. It's absolutely a scandal that children are malnourished, that half the population are facing famine, and others in terms of food insecurity. There is no need for this. There's excessive checking at the borders. And I spoke this morning to Ayman Safadi, the foreign minister in Jordan. I spoke to Egyptian Shukri yesterday, and I spoke to the Palestinian Prime Minister yesterday also, and they're telling me the situation is dire, absolutely catastrophic. And I would appeal to Israel to show humanity in terms of enabling the essentials of life to get into Gaza for the civilian population.
One more question.
Can you understand that? Okay.
Just ask one for the Professor briefly. Describes a terrorist attack as somewhat likely, I think. It doesn't go into detail on the units on the reasonable worst case scenario. Can I ask what is the expert group view as the worst case scenario for a terrorist attack?
We, in line with international good practice, we don't reveal the nature of the terrorism expert focus group. It was carried out in the same way as the others, where the experts determined what the reasonable worst case scenario was and assessed it based on likelihood and impact, but we wouldn't discuss it and wouldn't reveal it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Professor.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. It was so nice to meet you. Thank you again. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good piece of work.
Yes.
Thank you.
I didn't say, but by the way, central government came out very highly in the term.
Fundamental MS for sectors leaders urge you
Thank you.